Alright, this video is going to go over the final step of this project, which would be setting up our documentation and our paper space. So kind of getting all of our construction documents ready. So the first thing that I always like to do before I put views on sheets is to kind of prepare the views a little bit to place them. So we're going to put our floor plan on a sheet. We're going to do all 4 of our elevations on a single sheet, and since I've done that for this building before, I know we can get them all to fit on one. And then we're going to do our 2 building sections, our wall sections on another sheet, and then we'll do a cover page as well with our renderings and a schedule for all of our different sheets in this document. So I'm just going to go into my level 1 floor plan by double clicking on it. And there are a couple of things I want to double check and prepare to make sure I can fit this onto a view. Again, please make sure that you have all of your dimensions placed. If you don't, I don't have them all placed in the demo, but you should have all of your dimensions going across all of your walls and your doors and your windows. But what I want to do is I want to show my crop region, which is this button down here. You're going to click on that little crop symbol with the light bulb. And we can see here that that crop region is pretty large at the moment. So we want to take these elevation views and bring them in. When you go to highlight your elevation views, you want to make sure you do kind of like a larger bounding box. And then you're just going to click and drag to bring them closer to the building. I usually like to have them kind of lined up with where I have section heads and stuff. But the reason you want to do that is because this line right here is our plane, essentially. So this is where the camera is sitting to take a look at this picture. And sometimes this gets dragged into the middle of the building for whatever reason. And this is actually going to produce a section cut. So if I go into my south elevation right now, this is not an elevation view. This is a section cut view of this building. But if I was to just drag that plane back out and go into my south elevation, we can see now that it genuinely is a south elevation. So one way to try to stop that from happening is just to highlight a big box around that when you go to drag these views in, which, whoops, I only see it. In that case, I was only dragging the panel. And big highlight, drag in. Another way to quickly check is if you just click on those arrowheads once, you can then just double check that all of those planes are sitting outside, which they are. Then I'm going to bring this box, this crop region, just as tight around my building as possible. You want to kind of be a little careful that you don't accidentally cut some of those symbols out. In something like the floor plan, it's not going to matter too much because we will be able to get this to fit pretty easily. And then once you have that cropped really nicely, you're just going to hide your crop region. So we never want that box visible, but we just do need it to make sure that we are cropping this view to the correct size for it. So then I'm going to do a pretty similar process with my east elevation. So I'm going to go into my east elevation here. I also want to double check that I've got my scale set correctly. So my scale right now is set to 1/8 of an inch equals a foot. I'm going to set that to 1/4 inch equals a foot. And then I want to pull all of these spot elevations in fairly close to the building. So if you click on any one of these spot elevations, there'll be a little dot here that we can click and drag to bring those pretty close to our building. And we'll do the same thing on the other side. And we may need to, after we place these on sheets, adjust where they're sitting or how close we need to pull them in. And then I'm going to show my crop region, try to have it as tight around my building as possible. That's a pretty good size. So then I'm going to hide my crop region. I'm going to then go do the exact same thing with the north. So I'll double click in my north view. I'm going to drag it by that dot on either side as close as I can to the building. And then I want to check my scale, which I want as 1/4 inch equals a foot. And then I always like to do with these sections, I like to drag their heads and tails if I have more than one in a view to be nice and lined up with each other. After I changed my scale too, I realized I could bring those a little bit closer. Then I want to show my crop region. It's already a pretty good size since I already condensed those lines and things together. So I'm going to hide it again, go into my south one. Now, looks like here my spot elevations are already brought in. I should change my scale to 1/4 inch equals a foot, but let's say in this one, I'm going to totally forget to do it. So I'm going to accidentally bring this onto the piece of paper at 1/8 of an inch equals a foot. And therefore, I'll show you that you can change it after the fact. We want to look at our crop region. It's nice and tight around our building. And then we're going to go to the west one. This one I am going to change my scale to 1/4 inch equals a foot. Make any adjustments I may need. So these are a little too close on this side, so I'm going to drag these out. I just couldn't see the word foundation really clearly. I'm going to check my crop region to show it, and in this particular one, I'm going to accidentally leave that crop region on. So I should come back down here and turn it off, but I'm going to leave it on so that this way I can show you again how you can fix it. There's also little shortcuts here to have it where the crop region is visible or not visible. So you can also just use your properties bar to change it. I just kind of prefer down here. Same thing then with like our view scale. So I'm going to go into my building section 1 and check all this out too. So you'll see here that it's already set to 1/4 inch equals a foot in this view. And this box is already our crop region. So our crop region is visible by default in this view. So I'm just going to turn it off. I'm pretty pleased with how this view looks. And then same thing, I'm going to go into my section 2. Again, my crop region, my scale is already set. My crop region is already here. So I just want to hide it from there. And then with my wall section, so I'll double click in here and adjust my wall section. Now, on the previous times I did this building, I was able to get the wall section to fit at 1 inch equals a foot scale. So I'm going to preset it to that scale size. And you can see then like a lot of our hatches and stuff kind of adjusted automatically for it. And then I just want to make sure that I hide my crop region. If yours doesn't fit at this size, I'll show you like a pretty easy way to fix that. And then we're ready to put these on sheets. Before we can put them on a sheet, we need to make sure that we load those sheets in. So I'm going to do keyboard shortcut FF to load in a family. And then if I scroll all the way down to the bottom of my categories, I've got title blocks. These are pretty basic generic title blocks when you go to do your internship or work on your own. There will be kind of company title blocks already put in place, but we're just going to use this size D sheet and load that in. And then we can create a new sheet by coming over here in our project browser, right-clicking on the sheets and saying, I'd like to make a new sheet. And we're again going to use this size D piece of paper. So on here, we've got our very generic, very boring title block in place, and then we can fill in some of these labels. So for owner, you should put your own name. Please make sure you are lettering everything. If your name is too long to fit there, just feel free to do like your first initial and your last name. The project name for this is going to be Dogwood House. And then down here is where we would put our sheet name and our sheet ID. So we're going to do our floor plan first, which I'm going to call floor plan. And then our ID of A101 actually works pretty darn well for this project, so we're just going to leave it at that. Now to put our floor plan on here, we're just going to click and drag and then release and then click to place it. And I'm just going to eyeball it as close as I can to the center of the drawing. And at the scale of 1/4 inch equals a foot, it fits there pretty well. If you are accidentally still at 1/8 of an inch equals a foot, like this, you can easily just come over here and switch it. We also, whenever we bring a view in, we automatically get a title bar. So it's giving me a view number, it's giving me a view name, and it's giving me a view scale. And that's all just going to get listed by default in here, which is pretty nice. We don't need to move it or adjust it in any case in this particular drawing, but we are going to need to do that for our elevations. So let's make a new view for our or a new sheet for our elevations. So I'm going to right click on sheets here and say I would like to make a new sheet. And then size D, you'll see that my label for my project owner and my project name, they automatically get carried over. They're going to be the same on every single page. For our sheet name, I'm going to call this one exterior elevation. And then my sheet number for an elevation, I would want a 200 because that 200 means elevation. And then the 01 means that it's the first in the series here. So now I'm just going to start by dragging in my east elevation. So I'm going to click, drag, release, and then click to place it. This is a part of a project where I really like using the arrow keys on my keyboard to kind of nudge something into place to try to get stuff lined up pretty nicely. And so I've got my east elevation here. Keep in mind that that box doesn't necessarily need to be on the paper because that box is not going to print out at all. And I want to move this title up a little bit. So I can click and drag to move that title. If I want to change how long the title is though, I need to click once on the view and then I can drag that grip to make the title a little bit shorter. So we're going to do a pretty similar process for our south elevation, or excuse me, our north one. So I'm going to click and drag, release. And then when I go to place it, you'll see that dotted line pop up. That means that these levels are aligned with each other. And we want to try to do that, follow our orthographic rules whenever possible. So I've got my north view on here. Everything looks like it's doing pretty good. None of my views are overlapping. If I can maybe try to move it over a little bit. If your lines are overlapping here, you can also double click into this view. I'm now active in the north elevation view, and I could drag these to be longer or shorter. So if things were sort of overlapping and getting in the way, I can sort of move them around and then just double click outside of the view to get out of it. I'm going to click and drag my north symbol here so that way it's lined up with the east one. And then I'm going to click once on this view so I can shorten the title, the name of the north view. You'll notice here that it's putting little numbers on each of these. And if I actually go into my floor plan, you'll see that it's filled in my elevation markers in my floor plan automatically with the view number and the sheet name and the view number and the sheet ID. So that stuff's getting filled in. And if I was to change stuff about my sheets, it would get filled automatically too. So I'm going to go back to my exterior elevations. I'm going to bring my west view in, and remember this one I forgot to change my scale on. Oh no, this one I believe I forgot to hide my crop region. So I bring this view in, I go to place it, it's got this big box around it that I forgot to delete. So I could just double click inside that view, hide it, double click outside that view, and now it's gone. So if you forget to change it, it's easy to fix. I always like to try to line these views up whenever I possibly can, and it's not going to give you that little dotted line when they're lined up for it. So what I like to do is just kind of superimpose. I'm going to place this on top of there and then use my arrow keys to kind of move it up and move it over. And if I zoom in, the arrow keys really shift it only a tiny, tiny, tiny bit. And I'm going to click and drag it while holding the shift key. So that way it's just going to only move straight down. And that's pretty good. For my title, I need to move my title over. And so if I click and drag my title, you'll see that it shows when it's lined up there. And then if I click on the view once, I can even move these bars to be at the same spot. Now, what unfortunately doesn't exist is the ability to line up or have an alignment with these spot elevations. And so if you are someone like me who would really like to do that, what you could do is what's called a detail line. So I go into the annotate tab and then it's here, or keyboard shortcut DL. And I can draw a line straight down here, hit escape once, draw a line straight down here, hit escape once, hit escape again. And now I can double click inside this viewport and I can roughly adjust these to be at the same level. Which, because I have them set as 3D, they tend to move with each other. If we set them as a 2D line, this will move by itself. and then double click outside of here, double click in here, click on to set that to 2D, and then you can move these by themselves. 2D. Is this a necessary step? Many would say no, but I like to have everything nice and organized. I'll double click outside the view, and then I'll just click on these lines to delete them. Now, in my south elevation, I forgot to set my scale. So when I click and drag release, I immediately notice that this box is way too small. So I could either reset my scale by double clicking in it, or I could come over here and say I would like a scale of 1/4 inch. And again, it's not going to do an alignment for me. So I like to superimpose them on top of each other and use my arrow keys to just kind of, if I zoom in, just because orthographically I should have all of these nice and lined up. And then I'm going to click to drag it. So I'm clicking and holding, and then I'm going to hold shift. So that way I could see where those two would meet up nice and neatly and even. I'm going to hit outside that view, click and drag my title, click the view once, drag that title a bit bigger. And I now do need to go in this view and make some adjustments. So I'm going to double click in this view here. And I'm going to adjust like my section head to try to align with here. Again, I could make it where I use detailed lines to do that. And I'm just going to kind of eyeball them into place. And I'll even do a little bit of eyeballing into place with my spot elevations here. So I'm going to make it 2D and then like roughly move it. 2D. Whoops, I didn't line those up. 2D. I wonder, these ones should all move together because they're already linked. So you can absolutely just kind of roughly eyeball them into place. I just kind of prefer to have that line as a guide for it. And so I've got all 4 of my elevations on here. We're going to do another sheet then for our section. I'm going to right click on sheets, new sheet, size D. Our sheet name here is going to be called sections. And our sheet ID will be A301 because the 300s represent our section style we use. So I'm going to drag in my section 1, drag, release, click to place it. Drag in my section number 2, click, release, and click to place it. I'm going to use my arrow keys just to nudge this one down a little bit. And then I'll use my arrow key to nudge that one up a little bit. I do need to move that title. And even then, I'll double click in this view. These are already set to 2D, which is kind of nice. So I can eyeball them into place a little bit. Or I could use that detail line trick just to try to organize the drawing a little bit more, make it a little easier to read. Maybe I'm going to pull this section head down and up. And then I'm also going to bring my wall section in over here. So that's click and drag, click to release. Now my wall section actually fits pretty good right off the bat. But if yours doesn't, I double click in this view to change it. So double click inside your wall section, show your crop region. What could be happening is maybe you just have too much space in between this view and this one. So just use those arrows to try to move them down a little bit. And it can also be that you can condense maybe some of the drawing space out of it. So maybe you have like a lot of your section, your foundation showing. You could try to like make a little bit less of the window in each space and then move these down just to try to get it to fit on here. Which, whoops, I accidentally double clicked. So I'm just going to hit cancel. Move that one down a little bit. So a lot of times what will happen is students will have a lot of like the foundation wall down here showing. and we can kind of condense that down. And so you can make this where you can get it to fit at this size. This is the style of view that I'll often place on a sheet and then kind of adjust my sizes so that way I can make sure it's going to fit and work. So I'm going to hide my crop region and then just double click outside the view. The last sheet that we're going to make is going to be our cover page. So we're going to right click on sheets and say I'd like to make a new sheet and say OK. For this one, we're going to call it cover page or cover sheet. And then for our ID, I usually will do something like A001 because in our sheets here, if I expand them, it puts them in order and I want the cover page to come first. So this is a little one trick I'll use to make it go first. There's another way when we make a schedule that we can have them reorder them into kind of any order we want. But for our simple first project, we can just do it this way. This is a little easier. And what I'm going to do is bring in my kitchen rendering. So I'm going to click and drag, bring my kitchen rendering in, and I'm going to bring my outside rendering in as well. Click and drag. If you have renderings from Twinmotion or Enscape or any other features there, you can bring in pictures just through the insert where you can link an image or you can import an image and just bring that directly into here. One thing with these pictures is that my exterior looks so much smaller than my interior. So I can double click on that view and then click on it to kind of roughly adjust the size. I might make both of them a little larger. So I'll make my outside view, double click outside of it. I'll go into my kitchen view, double click on it, then click it once, make it larger. And I'm just kind of eyeballing these roughly to be the same size. Double click outside of it. And then let's move these around a little. I'll do my one here. My computer's having a little bit of a glitch, but there we go. If I zoom in and out, that glitch should be solved. You can also use my arrow keys to kind of nudge them. Okay, there we go. And that's plenty big for them. Now these titles, especially on a page like this, these titles are pretty silly and goofy. So go ahead and click on either one of these views, and we're going to edit the viewport type. So we're going to edit type. We're going to duplicate it, and we're going to make a new style called no title. And then for title, we want to set that to none. For show title, we want to set that to no. And then we're just going to click apply and OK. So now this picture exists without a title. We'll click on this one, and we're going to adjust this as well to say no title. The last thing then we're going to do is create a schedule or a sheet list that's then just going to have like an index of all our pages. In this project, since we have 4 pages, it wouldn't be the end of the world to go into the annotate tab and just make a text box and type out what we wanted to say for our sheet index. But if we were working on a much larger project where we've got even like 20 or 30 sheets, that's going to be a little annoying and cumbersome to like keep track of on that cover page. So to make a new sheet list, we're going to right click on schedules right above the sheets and say that we want to make a new sheet list. And the 2 things we want in our sheet list here are going to be the sheet name. I'm going to click on sheet name and move it over, and sheet number. And click to move that over for our schedule. We want sheet number to come first, so we're just going to use that to move the parameter up. And when I click OK, Revit is going to make like a very sad looking, in this case, Excel sheet for our sheet number and our sheet name. If we want to add this to our page, we're just going to go back to our cover page by double clicking on it here, or you could click on it up here. Expand your schedules by clicking that little plus sign, and then click and drag and click to place your sheet list. Now, this is an incredibly small sheet list for this piece of paper, and so it's a little silly looking. So I'm going to go in and format it a little bit within these schedules. So I'm going to double click on the sheet list here. or I could have come up to the tab here. I'm going to format it or change its appearance. Realistically, you could click on any of these edit buttons at all, because all it does is just bring you into these different tabs here. So I would like to change my appearance and get rid of the grid lines, and I also am going to get rid of the title in total, and then click OK. And if we go look at it on our cover page now, we don't have that grid there, which is helpful, but it's still ever so incredibly small. So how I like to fix this is I like to go back into the sheet list, grab column A, and then I'm going to adjust its font. And I found that a 1/2 inch works well on this particular project for our size. And so I'm just going to make those a 1/2 inch. They don't look like they changed, but they did. I'm even going to change like my sheet number. I'm going to make that bold. And then I'm going to click on column B, and I'm going to change my font size to a 1/2 inch again. Okay. I'll click on sheet name, and I'll go into the font, and I'll make that bold. And if we look at it now on our cover page, it's much larger. We can click on it and adjust these. Let's even make sheet number 1 line. That's good. That'll be good for this one. Which I just realized I put our cover page last, so we actually need to format a little bit. So let's go back into our sheet list. Let's go into our sorting or grouping, or again, really, you can click on any of these. And we want to sort by sheet number, and then click OK. And now you'll see that our cover page is first. So that way it's cover page, floor plan, exterior elevations, and then our sections. So go ahead and make sure you save your project here. One thing that a few students, not an incredible amount, but a couple of students kind of note is when they close out of Revit altogether and then they open their project back up, all of the tabs at the top are gone. And that's because Revit will only just open up like the last tab you were ever in. Sort of think of it like if you were using Chrome and you had a bunch of, tabs open at the top. When you close it and open Chrome back up again, you only ever have one tab. When I open my project back up here, I won't have all of those tabs that I just worked in. I'm only going to just open up to cover page here. I'm going to be able to navigate through all of your stuff here as long as you are submitting your RVT file, your Revit file, and it is the copy of the last one you worked on. So another important thing to keep in mind, and so I'll go into my folder here. Like, I have my project currently saved on my desktop. These are all versions that Revit made as automatic backups. This one that doesn't have a string of numbers on the end, that is the last version that I physically saved myself. Some ways you can double check is if you organize by the date modified. This was the last one that, or like this is the newest, latest version. And another thing to check too is you can check on file size, because realistically your final product would be the heftiest file that you would have on there. So when you go to submit your work, please make sure you are submitting your RVT file of your latest version of this project. And at this point, the Dogwood house, our first Revit experience, is